on to our last panel of the day. The rest of the evening will be shorter speeches and conversations that are very much in the spirit of keynote addresses. But this is our last panel, so if you may take your seats. I'm very excited to introduce the next panel, which is on capital, compute, and control, and the panelists will walk in now. The big questions they're going to answer is, how do we finance Africa's digital sovereignty? The panel will be moderated by Alex Tsado, who is the co-founder, COO, and CPO of Ahura AI. He's also the executive director of the Alliance for AI. Some of the questions that the panel will address link to what we have heard around financing. How do we make sure that we can build capacity and secure the foundations we need for AI and digital innovation? It's a hard question. How do we ensure sovereignty when we often have to go out and raise money from the very people in whose name we want to be sovereign from? So welcome so much.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Hope everyone is ready. Please, let's be seated and get started. All right. So, I guess as she shared, I'm Alex Tsado, and we run an organization called Alliance for AI. We've been trying to work with different African enterprise and governments to operationalize AI in Africa. In November, before I have the panelists introduce themselves, just a little context. In November last year, 2024, myself and a friend in the audience, Selena Lee from Zindi, we ran a research with UNDP, and from our research, we found that only 5% of the capable talent in Africa has access to the compute they need to build AI products. The AI products that Dr. Bayo on the last panel was speaking about, on how these products can really improve the lives of people at the bottom of the pyramid, of people in villages, not just in the cities. And so this panel is going to be diving into more of those questions and thinking through how the capital can be surfaced, whether it's on the private sector or the public sector. And we even have some voices here from the US. So it's going to be a rich conversation. And I urge you to pay attention to it, even though it's the last one before we go to drinks and food. So for my distinguished panelists, I'll have you spend 1 to 2 minutes sharing about your background as it relates to this topic, because you've all done incredible things. But let's share the pieces that are related to this. We'll start with you here.
Yeah, so thank you, Alex. So my name is Peter Ndegwa. I am the CEO of Safaricom PLC, which is the largest telecom business in East Africa, in Kenya actually. Just gone into Ethiopia, where we are now a fresh new operator there, and we already have like 10 million customers. We are also the largest, we are also the pioneer of M-Pesa, which is the largest fintech in the region. So we process a lot of data and information, both on the telco side, but also on the fintech side. So this whole aspects about using data, storing data, compute, infrastructure, building data centers, and actually also off-taking that is a big conversation. We already have data centers in our existing markets, of course, given that we already have capacity, internal capacity, but there is so much more to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much there. Franklin, we'll just go down the line. So,
my name is Franklin Olakunle Amoo. I am a Nigerian American and the founding managing partner of Bayless Emerging Markets. We are a principal investment firm focused on the industrialization of Africa, which we want to effectuate through 2 sectors. One is manufacturing, the other is digital infrastructure. In our digital infrastructure practice, we have a dedicated platform called Bayless Digital, which focuses on building continental scale digital infrastructure portfolios. We work quite closely with global partners, particularly in Asia and the United States, where I sit on the U.S. Presidential Advisory Council for Doing Business in Africa, and I chair the Digital and ICT Subcommittee. We are very, very forward-thinking in how we look at capital formation, and we're extremely active in building fiber optic systems and high-capacity compute assets across Africa. Very nice to be here. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to the panelists.
Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Lulite Ejigu. I run a consulting firm. I'm just looking at a lot of different investments and strategies that are building into the continent. I'm Ethiopian American, very much aware of Safaricom and their new entry into Ethiopia. I also chair a diaspora trust fund for Ethiopia as well. So looking at diaspora-led initiatives and investments and how that can kind of power and combine kind of with like local interests and as well as abroad. I think that the diaspora has a lot of tool sets and a lot of connections to firms across the world, but also have a lot of domestic context, which I think is really important and really important for the transformation that's happening in Africa right now, particularly in digital and AI, but also just in how to move finance and how to move capital, how to get that foreign exchange back, and a lot of things that kind of new investors are looking for.
Sounds very good. Dr. Adel.
Hi, my name is Dr. Adel ElMessiry. I'm Egyptian American, and I have a PhD in AI, machine learning, and trust networks, which became blockchain. I have 3 successful exits, 1 unicorn, and about a dozen in flight. I usually focus on the intersection of AI and blockchain. So in my 2 portfolio companies, AI Value Protocol that aims to verify, certify, and enable AI projects across the globe, as well as AI DCT, which is decentralized compute tokenization, allows the proliferation of AI compute powers throughout the globe with reduced cost for enabling those resources to appear not only in the US, but also globally, so that we can participate in the upcoming AI revolution equally.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And so with that, we were listening to the previous panel, and they started to talk about the concept of sovereignty, right? Sovereign AI. I wanted us on this panel as well to give some of the perspectives from where we come from. You're an operator on the Africa side, and you're an operator on the US. I'll probably get 2 of you to comment on this, and let's see how we think about it. So perhaps you go first, Peter, on sovereignty. How do you think about sovereignty? Why is it important, and what components does it have?
Yeah, I think the previous panel did a very good job in terms of defining sovereignty. I think it's fair to say that in Africa, we use capacity that is overseas. And we do not have local capability, either because we've not installed compute power that is adequate, or actually that we don't have relevant capacity to actually be able, especially from a language perspective. So the other element is also that we have data for government that from a legal perspective and a regulatory perspective need to be in country. So for example, we process a lot of information that's financial that is supposed to be in country. So it's important that we think about sovereignty, both from a local perspective, but also from a regional perspective, and also from a latency issue. We are doing a lot of work with public sector, especially in Kenya, on public sector digitization in the healthcare side, and there's clearly a lot of requirements for local hosting, secure hosting of government data, and therefore sovereignty is really, really important. I think the final one is actually on capability, to be able to build local capability that allows us to have control or how we build but also use.
Yes, that's very interesting. One thing I heard there across several things you've mentioned is the absence of some of this capabilities, or local capabilities or local infrastructure is stopping us from some of the use cases that would otherwise be building if we had those things.
Absolutely.
Yes. Dr. Adel, I don't know if you want to add to that, especially because you operate in the United States.
Yes.
So how do you think about that from here?
So So I want you to kind of like think about AI as two parts. You have algorithm and data. And then the AI is the marriage of those. That's the AI model. And once you learn the AI model, you cannot unlearn it, which means that your data has been assimilated within the AI model, and now it is gone there. So monetization of those is really important. And from a sovereignty point of view, which is what we focus on in AI DCT, is the ability for you to control your data within your own data center or group of data centers. So this way you can have a wall around the intelligence that you are building. See, in my view, we all are familiar with the income gap, the cultural gaps, but there is another divide that's coming in, which is the intelligence gap. Those that have access to intelligence generated by AI and those that do not have. That's why we need to move now.
Very, very strong points. We need to move now. We cannot wait. And I hope people in the audience are thinking of how they will move forward. Yes, I hope so. A lot of the times we talk about the gaps, we talk about the issues, but I'm one of those who likes to, not just look at Mount Everest and be stumped, but think about what's the first step, or what are the first steps that have been taken, and what step do we need to take next? So on that point is where perhaps I'll bring you in, Franklin, right? There's numbers quoted about how few the data centers in Africa are, but on the flip side, there has been some good investments over the last 5 years. So it'd be good to share a bit about what some of those investments have been, some by your organization as well. So at least we know where some of the progress has happened so that we can think through what next. Now we have the data centers. How do we get the GPUs? How do we get the capabilities on top of those? So yeah, I would love for you to share a bit about that.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. It's a good one. Look, I think to achieve the objectives that have been set out, we're talking about sovereign AI, we're talking about having Africa participate in the AI movement, as Dr. ElMessiry said. I think, first let's say why, right? I absolutely agree with the intelligence gap, but also in order to attract the partners we need to make the case for why Africa should be involved that is relevant to them as well. And I think the intelligence gap is a good way to start. Because these models will not be as smart as they could be without 1.2 or 1.3 billion people's information and thoughts and the contribution to those large language models, to the training of those models. That input is critical, not just for Africans, but for these systems to work appropriately, and also the applications to work appropriately. We've invested in a number of conversational AI startups who are looking at African languages and working to make sure those are translatable on systems like Zoom and WhatsApp and so on, which then increases the sort of market opportunity for big players overseas and so on, and also increases the number of people using some of these large language models overseas. Another place where that's going to be relevant is in the latency that Dr. Peter talked about already. So edge data centers to get the inference happening locally, so that when you use ChatGPT and so on, you're having that model working closer to the user, having a better user experience, and creating a bigger market there. Now, how do you get there? And I think that's where you need radical ambition and radical practicality. I think one of the problems that I've always experienced, I came from Wall Street. I had a traditional sort of New York Wall Street background, and then transitioned into Africa about 10 years ago, is we tend to play small ball when it comes to Africa. It's sort of, this is good for the African context, and I reject that, right? There's 1.2 billion people, there's a lot of talent, there's a huge diaspora. The same sort of ambition you have in Silicon Valley or you have in Shanghai, you should have in Nairobi, right? You should have that kind of goal set in mind in terms of the digital infrastructure footprint you want, the applications you want to develop. Now, how do you get there? You got to be practical. Africa needs partners. It feels good to talk about sovereignty and sort of, sort of rejecting kind of foreign partners. But the reality is people have capital, people have technology, people have know-how. And the trick is to incentivize them to come. So I'll give you just one example. We've been able to build with partners a number of data centers across Africa that are focused on blockchain token mining. And why did we do that? Our end goal is to have high performance compute on the continent for things like AI and other sort of use cases, but that's a hard sell today, realistically. I'm a very sort of honest guy, right? So to tell someone who's doing AI to put that in Africa today, it's a hard sell. But if I can get someone who's willing to move now, as most people know, the crypto community is full of people who are much more mercurial, much more willing to take a risk, and they don't really care where it is as long as they can, the basis in their Bitcoin is at a level where they can make money. So we have a lot of stranded power in Africa. We're creating that stranded power at very, very low cost, sometimes 2-3 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's attracting the Bitcoin community, which is then funding our ability to create the compute.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So then, very interested in this concept of how do you change that notion of lowballing Africa when it comes to investments. There's capital from outside, and there's even capital from the inside. But there isn't that push to or willingness to make the appropriate investment. So perhaps I will bring in Lulite and afterwards Peter as well to talk about this. Is maybe from an economist standpoint.
I was gonna add on to what Franklin said. I think that it's about really being creative about where your capital is coming from. So I used to say, even like a year ago, probably even not even a year ago, we need to compete, Africa needs to compete. And now I'm just saying we need to collaborate. We need to figure out a fast way to collaborate, because if we each company, each country just tries to focus on just their one area or just their one expertise, it's like we will be so far behind so quickly, because this type of transformation is happening in the next 5 years. And 5 years is probably being really generous. Franklin's like, yeah. So it's happening so quickly that we really need to figure out how to collaborate, how to kind of open those doors, how to understand how to impact domestically, but really think really globally about how we, where we source capital from, being creative about it. And we talked about crypto. It's like, the crypto, even the transformation didn't even happen because of AI and technology. It happened because of energy and low cost energy. So what we're finding now is this transformation in technology is changing the way we look at natural resources and minerals, and that kind of mineral race you've seen recently in multiple countries across the continent, where countries have taken a strong stance saying we're not going to export our raw materials anymore, trying to build the value chain, supply chain. Again, that's capital, right? Taking a larger position in that supply chain allows you to be able to maintain more of that capital at home in the continent. But also like how Ethiopia became a very large crypto producer because of low cost clean energy. So we had that stranded energy. There was a lot of crypto miners that wanted to come in. They came in basically overnight because, like he said, they'll go anywhere for low electricity. So now you have a whole bunch of producers, but you don't really actually have the system to actually have the payment infrastructure and the rail systems to actually take in crypto. So you have a huge creative economy making money in crypto overseas, using the informal market to get that through peer-to-peer, through different family members across the world, and then trying to transfer that back into the domestic market. So you have a lot of fragmentation that needs to really create collaboration, but that collaboration can be done in very innovative, more modern ways of looking at policy and governance as well. Such as for crypto, it would be identifying how to add crypto kind of into the central banking system, learning how to be able to create those types of policies that allows countries like Ethiopia to not just be producers, but then actually add that to the balance sheet that can actually expand their ability to borrow and have more FX to be able to have that debt service. So there's a policy question, there's a mineral question, there's an energy question, but all of it's intertangled. And they all impact the others. So that's why I say it's a lot more collaboration across sectors, and a lot more collaboration that we need across other places in the world that have already done this. And Africa can just be another market in which it's being done, versus Franklin mentioned, Africa needs to have a different type of solution, not necessarily.
Yes, no, that's really good. And you said other places in the world where it's been done. Well, even there's also the places in Africa where it's been done with Safaricom. So I would love to, bring you up here, and if you could share a bit of the experience, what that was. How do you, as a private entity, decide to go ahead and set up your private cloud, and I believe even purchase some GPUs and hire a large data science team? How did you think through that economic model? What drove you to do that, and why are your friends not doing the same? It seems to have...
Maybe give him the hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I actually do agree with the concept about collaboration and actually partnership. But I think we also need to start with the strengths that we already have. So, for example, Africa has been leading for a long time in terms of mobile money. We just launched this week Safaricom, what we are calling FinTech 2.0, which is the next stage of FinTech. So we can actually start with what we already have. So in Kenya, we are already setting up a data center of our own, using our own captive capacity that we need to offtake, but also because we are doing a lot of work with government, making sure that government is one of the initial kind of offtaker. And then as we went into Ethiopia, we partnered with a number of international players such as Sumitomo, BII, and IFC. So it's actually bringing together parties that can help you really set up infrastructure which you'll not be able to set up on your own. So the collaboration across even operators within Africa can make a very big difference. We have four big operators, Safaricom, which is also part of the broader Vodacom and Vodafone, Airtel, Orange, and MTN. So actually leveraging what already exists. The second is the big advantage on energy, because as Lulite said, we have largely green energy, whether that's geothermal in Kenya or actually kind of hydro in Ethiopia. So we do have underlying kind of advantages that we have as Africa, and then attract investors. So the governments in the region are already doing that. So Kenya is already connecting OTTs plus investors to come in using geothermal energy to actually set up data. I think the data centers, the issue is you need resilience. So you need capacity, not just on the primary data center, but also secondary data center. And we see ourselves playing either primary or secondary. So playing different roles, and also not thinking just about specific countries, but also regional, as a regional hub. So Kenya being a regional hub can make a very big difference. But starting with what operators need, but also what government need, it's a big thing.
A quick follow-on there. Do you mind sharing one or two use cases in the machine learning, deep learning AI space that have driven usage? Because that's what a lot of organizations tend to struggle with.
So one of the use cases, given that we are in the fintech area, is just pure on the cyber side in terms of fraud detection and actually management. And we realized this was a very important one, because in fraud, especially in an African context and in the kind of handsets that people use, because you don't have smartphones and all that stuff, was a big thing. So that was the initial use case. The other one that we've been using is personalization, thinking about how you offer services on a personalized basis, even to the most basic phones in the market, linking it back to our customer value management. So very basic starting point, but actually you can build very, very quickly.
Very cool. Thank you very much for that. And as we get close to the end here, I'll bring you all in very soon. But first, Dr. Adel, I'd love you to share two things. One, if you've given thoughts to use cases in the US that you think could be localized on the African continent, maybe just one or two, since we're low on time. And then secondly, I think earlier we were having some conversations about, yes, you can go and buy the large GPUs and install them, but then there continue to be new creative approaches to running through this. Even on our side, we do have a Africa GPU hub where we are able to centralize GPUs that have been bought in different places and put them on a platform. But there was an interesting approach you were sharing with me. So first, use cases, and then secondly, other approaches to even getting access to compute.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And if you think about what I said earlier regarding the AI is basically data and an algorithm that generates a model that runs on those data. So even for things that we do here in the US, like predicting user behavior, predicting fashion, predicting different aspects of consumer purchases, all of those require data. And believe it or not, we've consumed all the data that is available on freely in the internet, except for what exists behind firewalls. So, so much so that we've started creating synthetic data to train, but those have proven ineffective after the fifth generation. So I see Africa as a source of that raw data coming through those. So think of it as your raw ore, the interaction of it. What a human means, their behavior, their interaction with each other, their marketing patterns, and so forth, which is really great for training AI models that we can't do here because we consume the data. And then your second one is a question regarding how do we create a new model that enables us to build more sovereign data centers in the African continent without having to spend a ton of money and having to bring in large investors that would be limited to the number of them. Well, I was tickled when I was hearing the conversation around the blockchain and tokenization, because y'all are absolutely right. Tokenization and blockchain is the way for the future for that. And that's what AI DCT does, is allowing you to tokenize your data center. So instead of thinking about a data center in the sense of, hey, I need to raise $50 million to $100 million in order to create a data center, and then I need to justify the revenue, we come in and help you tokenize that. So the data center itself might be in Ethiopia, access to cheaper energy, but the investors coming from there could be across the continent, each one with $10 investment in a data center that comes in. Then partnering with big providers that can come in and provide the infrastructure without you having to buy it. You don't buy your house in cash, at least in the US. You don't buy your car in cash. So why do you buy your data center in cash? You don't need to. So you make your dollars go further. And that creates this effect of a flywheel that enables Africa to actually leapfrog the current technology. And that's the beauty of blending AI, economics, tokenization, and the blockchain to usher in a better way for us to go forward that benefits not only Africa, but the entire globe. And I will conclude with this. Globally, the share of internet commerce is 15% of the GDP on average. In the African continent, with 1.2, 1.5 billion, which is close to 20-something percent of the population, we're only 5.2% of the GDP. So there is a big gap to grow there. We need to close it. We need to close it now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. And with that, I will call on the rest of my panelists to share your concluding statements. If there's any additional advice you want to share with the audience, or a commitment that you're making to how you can continue to drive this space of compute, capital, and control.
I wouldn't just add on to what Dr. Adel said, because I think that what he was basically saying is, how do we lower the burden to entry, and how do we think about more, it's not necessarily microfinance, but like how do we think about a more collective way of raising capital that, one, it de-risks. So if you were to go and get that capital matched by any type of institutional investor, it's going to be a lot stronger than you have like 2 big fish, than you have like $1 million. And so I think that that's something that I think we need to get more creative about and work more collaboratively about. So I think that's something that I spend a lot of time thinking around. How do we lead that with the diaspora globally? How do we think about platforms like impact funds that aren't necessarily only focused on the development needs that the continent has, but also the impact that it's going to be creating, as well as the profit. Because I think that if we're not building something to actually see a quick growing profit something that can be sustainable, then it's like, what's the point of even working on it? So something that I think that I spend a lot of my time on is how do we think about different ways of bringing in capital and being able to tell that narrative a little bit stronger.
Fantastic. Please.
Sure. I would say a couple of things. One is just piggybacking on the collaborative issue. Let's start to think about Africa on a continental scale. I think a lot of our work in Africa is very sort of national or very local, and I understand that for there are a lot of reasons for that. But you know, we have a lot of comparative and complementary advantages, right? You know, if you look at you know, Ethiopia, we've talked about the large amount of low-cost power. Angola is another place. Angola has something like 4 gigawatts of hydropower, most of it underutilized, very, very inexpensive, but not a real sort of strong kind of digital infrastructure community, although they have made a lot of investments at the state level in fiber and so on. But they could, you know, there's no reason why they couldn't, you know, collaborate with, you know, people like Safaricom, other big firms across that are in different parts of the continent, but have know-how, have experience to come leverage that resource for our benefit. Now, there's something I think that we need to be very careful. I mean, Dr. ElMessiry was absolutely right about that remaining data being very largely African. There are a couple of other places in the world that haven't really participated in this sort of data labeling activity and creating sort of a usable, trainable data. But I don't think we want to repeat a pattern we've had in the past where we provide essentially a raw material, which is what data is, and allow value to be added elsewhere and sold back to us, which is what's going to happen, right? Because the applications will be utilized by us and consumed by us, but we won't be participatory in the production process. So I think that's something we have to be very careful about. And you said a declaration. Well, I just want to sort of tell a story or sing someone else's praises. So we're partnered and we're backing a Kenyan, actually, Dr. Tony Githinji. He is the founder of Semiconductors Technologies Limited, I'm sure you know, and he is manufacturing chips in Nyeri County, Kenya, which I thought was extraordinary. Very ambitious, but practical, right? Pragmatic, not dreaming. And his idea is to take the low-hanging fruit of the global sort of chip supply chain market, and we're helping him try to plug in to sort of the U.S. aspect of that. And so my declaration is that we will be manufacturing world-class chips in Africa, in Kenya. Maybe not GPUs just yet, but NVIDIA, watch out.
Fantastic. On our side, we will buy those chips, so we're looking forward to that. And then finally, please, Peter.
Yeah, I think I mean, as a local operator in the region, and actually a very successful one for that matter, is also to have an ambition. So we are already, although we've been a very successful telco operator, we now want to be a purpose-led technology company. So always thinking about how tech can be used for good and not for transforming the country. And in a way then translate that into, we want to be an AI native company in the next 5 years. Because by having ambition, then you can actually start to build the right infrastructure. We should not forget that there's still a lot of infrastructure to build even before you start to think about the compute. So the broadband, having people have the right smartphones, because they can't use super apps if they don't have smartphones. Having the traffic getting into the country, so the landing cables that are getting into the country and so on. And then expanding regionally. I think the second one is talent and capability. So we are doing a lot of work with universities, with startups. We have a big ecosystem of developers within the ecosystem of M-Pesa. So really focusing on capability. And then the third one, really being involved with big government transformation. So we are involved with the healthcare transformation, the fintech transformation. So showcasing what you can do at a regional level. M-Pesa is a global kind of leader and pioneer. So we can actually win locally rather than always rely on what counts. Then overlay financing. We will attract financing if we show ambition, if we show capability, and also if we show that actually we have the right policy and regulation.
Amazing. I almost wanted them to give a round of applause after that, but maybe they might, yeah? So So to close this, at least hopefully we've been able to share that we are not at the bottom of Mount Everest. We have started to climb it already. There's still a big mountain in front of us, but there are steps we can take. And hopefully for yourself, you're starting to see some of them. And if not, you feel free to reach out to us and ask us and all the others who've spoken through the rest of the day. And I hope that together we'll bring about, unlock the capital, the compute, and the control the continent needs to bring about sovereign AI and build the future that we want. Thank you very much, everyone on the panel, and everyone for listening. Thank you.